Hey, everyone, it's Fred here from RE CallSeg. I'm here with my friend Brian Bakke from Tax Prep. I want to show you guys this new tool that we just launched recently. It's called the Accelerated Depreciation Calculator. And I guess one of the reasons we wanted to have something like this out there was to help a lot of people that were wondering how CallSeg really works and how much depreciation they can take on a specific property. So a lot of the questions I get is whether a cost segregation is worth it for a specific client. Most of the times we have to really rely on the CPA. And I want to introduce you guys to Ryan from Tax Prep, who's here. He's a real estate CPA. He's an expert on the matter. So Ryan, thanks for joining, and happy to talk to you about cost segregation and happy to learn how we can help our clients kind of get a better idea on how cost segregation works.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me on the show today and just to talk to your audience about cost segregation studies. That's probably one of the most common questions that I get asked as a CPA. We have over 500 real estate clients, and most of them are doing cost segregation studies. Most of them are buying real estate. And before somebody does a cost segregation study, we always want to make sure and figure out, is it the right move for them? How much is it going to benefit them? And most importantly, how much is it going to save them in taxes? I think that's the golden nugget question that everybody wants to know. And after doing this 500 times, literally and figuratively, you understand what goes into whether or not somebody gets a cost seg study or not. And what are the factors that move the needle one way or the other? And we're going to talk about things today about purchase price and building type and land value and tax strategy and all those types of things. And it's going to be super helpful for your audience.
Yeah, I really appreciate it, Ryan. So yeah, we have, like I said before, we have this cost segregation calculator where you can pretty much add some specific details, just a few details about your property, and it will literally give you a very good idea on how much depreciation you can take over time. You can toggle here and see pretty much what you would wind up if you don't do a cost seg study versus if you do. So it's pretty good in terms of showing you the actual benefit of doing a cost segregation study. We have different property types. So we get a lot of residential properties, short-term rentals, more specifically, that these are people that want to do a cost segregation study. They have bought properties $500,000 or more. But they also, they all wonder, is a cost segregation study really worth it? And a lot of the times that question goes back to the CPA because they need to understand, if they actually qualify for this benefit. So Ryan, maybe you can tell us a little bit about kind of what goes into that.
Yeah, so there's a lot of factors that play in. And I love this graph that you're showing here because to me, what this is showing is how much money can you save or how much depreciation can you expect to get the first year with doing a cost segregation study versus not doing a study. And what it really all comes down to is time value of money, because the more money that you can save today that you put back into your pocket, and more importantly, you put back into your real estate portfolio, you're going to allow yourself to grow and accumulate your wealth way quicker than you would if you weren't doing cost segregation studies. I want to just throw that out there right now, get that out of the way. You are going to build tremendous amount of wealth if you can accelerate those deductions. When I first started teaching tax many years ago, one of the first things I told people, I said, there's two golden rules. Number one, you want to defer income as long as possible. So if you have a gain, if you have a profit, whatever, you want to push that off as far away as possible, pay that tax down the road. But if you have deductions, if you have expenses, if you have depreciation, you want to be able to speed that up as quick as possible. And that's what a cost segregation study allows you to do. We'll talk first about just purchase price. The higher the purchase price, generally speaking, the more benefit you're going to get from a cost segregation study. But it's not just about the purchase price, but it's about how much of that purchase price is depreciable. And that's where we get into the land value of your property is super important. Can you hit the little icon on the depreciable basis we could show people?
Yeah, sure. There you go.
And so what we notice is that markets in the Midwest, urban markets, outside major cities, those are going to be the areas that have the least amount of land value. And when you're talking about cost segregation studies, the one most important thing is how much is the land worth, because you never want to buy real estate just for the tax benefits. But if you are a high W-2, if you are a high earner, business owner, W-2 owner, or W-2 employee, you want to buy real estate in areas where you're going to get a lot of depreciation. And we just don't see that in these beach markets, Gulf Shores, Destin, 30A, California, Seattle, New York City. Not to pick on anybody, but where areas where there's a lot of land value, you're not going to get as much depreciation. In fact, we had a client, I'll never forget this, but we had a client in 2021. She bought $1 million property in the Smoky Mountains. It was awesome. She cash flowed really well on the thing, and she saved over 100 grand in taxes. And then the following year, she took that money that she saved in taxes and reinvested it into another property, except this one was on the beach. This was $1 million beach house. Okay. And I had to be the one to explain to her and tell her that, hey, you actually don't get the same tax benefit, even though you bought it for the same price, because the land value is so high. And one of the things you guys can do actually is, before you even buy a property, get with RE Cost Seg, get with your CPA, get with your accountant, and determine what is the land value on this thing. And one of the best ways to determine that is going on the county assessor website before you buy a property.
Yeah, right. And we do that all the time. I get a lot of, clients are upset after I have to tell them, or after they realize, this is not making sense. Just like you said, about this $1 million property, and I'm only getting this much. I thought, it was like 20%. And I'm like, yeah, but it's 20% from your cost basis. So, for all you guys, it's important that you understand and you plan ahead of time before you even buy a property. You have to know that you're not just buying the building, but you're also buying the land that's the building is sitting on, and that land, unfortunately, is not depreciable.
Well, and I think that's also a great point to bring up, is that, from a real estate perspective, a lot of people shy away from condos or townhomes because they got HOAs, they got communities, they got rules you have to follow. I personally try to avoid HOAs anytime I can whenever I buy properties. But from a tax perspective, a lot of times you don't own any of the land value if you're in an HOA or a community, or maybe you own a sliver. Maybe it's like 3 or 5%, but you don't own any land. And so you can buy that $1 million beach house or beach home if it's in an HOA or if it's a condo. And I think that's something to point out, is that might be something to consider if you're really looking for a lot of tax benefits.
That's a good point. And right. Most condos that we've seen here at RE Cost Seg have little to no land value, which actually wind up having, even better results than a nice, cabin, out there in the city. But yeah, I think the land value is, definitely very important. How about the short-term rental, like the use that these properties are kind of being rented on? Is there any difference? Like, what do you see from your end? Of course, I understand there's a difference between long-term and short-term, but like, how do you think people should tackle on the way they're renting these properties out?
Yeah, short-term rentals to me just seem to be a way better overall wealth building hack than a long-term rental. So for example, and we're going to cover that in some other videos you guys will have access to as part of RE Cost Seg and RE Tax Prep communities. But short-term rentals, for example, you don't have to be full-time in real estate to benefit from buying a short-term rental. You can actually, if you meet certain requirements, you can use short-term rental losses to offset your W-2 or your high business income, as opposed to, you wouldn't be able to do that with long-term rentals. But furthermore, short-term rentals, you typically tend to buy them fully furnished, and you're going to rent them out fully furnished as well. So you got to stock the couches. You have to put basically all the furniture for your guests to stay in. They're guests, not tenants, right? So you're going to have more benefits overall for short-term rentals just because there's more stuff in the property to depreciate, as opposed to a long-term rental. I mean, I own a few. We don't, there's nothing. It's literally just the rooms and even the appliances. Sometimes, you don't have a fridge or a dryer. Oh, a dryer most of the time, but I have rented places out where they didn't give me a fridge, or they definitely don't give me couches or beds or furniture. So on those long-term rentals, you're not going to get as much tax benefits overall as a short-term rental.
Yeah, totally. And we see that all the time when people buy, fully furnished houses, and those typically get, higher results because there's a lot of personal property that we can reallocate, and then in terms of depreciation, that's just like a big win there. How about, let's talk about a little bit more about like qualifications for, for some of our customers. A lot of them are kind of lost there. They see different articles, they go to different websites, they come to us and wondering if if they actually qualify to take this deductions against their active, because they're W-2 earners, and they wonder if it's something that's really worth for them to kind of go after.
Yeah, first thing I would get out of the way is, before you even look at short-term rental loophole or real estate professional status is what we call it, is do you have other passive income that year? Do you have lots of rental income coming in? Did you sell a rental property for a gain? Because if you do, well, that's considered a passive activity gain, and you can offset that by depreciation from other properties. So I remember on my 2021 tax return, I had two long-term rentals. They were both cash flowing, but I sold one of them. Okay, so I had income from one, I sold another for a huge gain, and then I bought a short-term rental. And that short-term rental, the losses from the short-term rental, because I did a cost segregation study, I was actually able to use those to offset the gains from my other properties. And you're able to do that whether or not you are managing the property, whether or not you qualify for one of these special exceptions. If you have gains from real estate and you have losses from real estate, those are going to offset each other. So anytime you have a huge gain, if you sold a property and you took that money and you bought a new property, that's a great year to look at a cost seg as well.
That's a great point. That's a great point, Ryan. Now, let's talk a little bit about like the date. Like, how does the date kind of matter in terms of, doing a cost segregation? If I bought a property 3 years ago, a lot of people are out there wondering, well, does it even make sense? There's probably not meat in the bone for me to go after this. What do you think there?
Yeah, it's all going to come down to a case by case basis. But this is a really cool thing about depreciation. If you place a property in service, let's say before 2022, well, you've already locked in the ability to depreciate up to 100% of 5, 7, and 15-year assets. Anything after 2022, that's obviously when it starts phasing out and into 80%, 60%, and moving forward. But what's so cool about kind of doing this look back, if you will, like let's say you bought a couple rental properties and you're just now discovering cost segregation study, is we can apply that cost segregation study to a specific tax year. Okay, so if you had a property in 2022 and you filed 2023 returns, and now we're already in 2024, well, our jobs as tax advisors is to tell you when do you actually want to apply that depreciation, because you could sit there and say, well, 2022 I didn't really make a lot of money, but 2023 I did. And in that case, we would want to apply the depreciation to your highest earning year if we can do that based on the tax code. But so it's properties placed into service up until 2022 are going to get up to 100% in bonus depreciation. And then 2023, it's only 80% on those personal property and site improvements. And then 2024 going into 2024 this year, it's only 60% on 5 and 15-year property.
Yeah, great to know. And also just for you all to know, our tool will kind of help, actually understands like how much bonus depreciation there is. You see how this changed here to 80% as soon as they change the place in service date to 2023. So, it's a very cool tool. You guys should really give it a try. And the next thing I want to touch base on is, the federal tax rate. I know this is part of like our advanced fields, but a lot of people are out there wondering, if I'm in a specific tax rate, does it really make sense to do a cost seg study? What is your experience with people in different like tax rate? When does it not, make sense, or like how does it impact the overall results of a cost seg if you're in different tax brackets?
Yeah, the goal with tax planning is not how can we save you the most amount of money in 1 year, but how can we save you the most amount of money over the course of your life? Okay. And what we tend to see is if you toggle that tax bracket thing right there, click on that for a second for me. Does it show the examples or the brackets or no? If you just click
Here
on
you
it.
go. Yep.
Oh, it doesn't show me those. But that's okay. So there's a 0, a 12, a 22, a 24, a 32, a 35, and a 37% tax bracket. Okay. Now, generally speaking, we don't want to zero you out. If you're in a 37% tax bracket and you bought 3 rental properties, I really want to try to take you down to only a 22% tax bracket. Why? Well, because you're going to be right back up in that high tax bracket the following year. So maybe if you bought 3 properties in 1 year, we only apply 2 cost seg studies in that year, and then we apply the other one the following year when you're back up to that high tax bracket. But generally speaking, if you're higher than a 22% tax bracket, I think cost segregation studies are going to make sense because they're going to allow you to keep more of your money and allow you to reinvest those tax savings into more properties. If your tax rate's below 22%, it may not be worth to speed up and accelerate the deductions because you're only getting them at 22%. I'd rather you wait for the future when you start making more money, whether it's your W-2 or your business or your rental property start making a lot more money, because then we could take those tax benefits at a higher tax rate. Okay. And imagine that difference, right? So it's always best explained by a story. So I had a client last year who bought 3 they were making about $600,000 or $700,000 W-2, and they bought 3 properties, and they were ready to just apply all 3 studies to their $700K income and completely zero out their tax bracket. Great. But I told them, I said, hey, look, we don't really want to zero you out. We want to take you down to that 22%. So instead of offsetting the whole $700,000, we only offset at $500,000, because then they were able to use that rest of that depreciation next year when they were back up into a higher tax bracket. And so that little difference right there, the 22 versus 37%, it's 15%, but 15% multiplied by $100,000, we're saving somebody $15,000 just by telling them when to apply the study.
Right. Wait, like to move now. Yeah, no, that's a very good point. I think, Ryan, I mean, what do you think about this tool that we made? How do you think it could benefit, people that is kind of wondering if their property is kind of worth doing a study? Do you think it provides enough information for them to kind of have a clear idea on if they need to move forward or not?
This is the best tool on the market right now. I mean, this is the best tool for somebody who's determining if a cost segregation study makes sense for them or not, without having to, schedule an appointment with a CPA or meet with a tax advisor. But this stuff, guys, it'll take you 5-10 minutes to fill this out, and you should be able to get a good, accurate number as to how much you can save by doing a cost segregation study. Remember, we don't want to buy real estate just for the tax benefits, but if you are a high earner, this tool is going to help you figure out how much you're saving in taxes by buying that next rental property and doing that cost segregation study.
Well, thanks a lot, Ryan. Thanks a lot for joining here with me. I think this is definitely a great tool for a lot of our audience. A lot of our people are going to be very happy with this. And as always, please make sure that you guys fit the criteria. And if you have any questions, we have Ryan here and the team from retaxprep.com that will help you kind of determine if this is the right move for you. There's always going to be nuances. You're always going to have, different scenarios. So of course, this tool is not going to have all that factored in. That's why we wanted to have Ryan here. And we partner with, retaxprep.com to make sure that you have the right information before you make your next move. So thanks a lot, Ryan, for joining.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
See you.